In this episode, Kate and David form a list of their 10 favorite boss battles.
Hello! That's my very dramatic entrance. Welcome to...
that was like a Navi fairy, but then she she went way down into it.
It's like if she were falling off one of the many cliffs that I often fall off of in this game.
And then, wait, when Link hits the ground, he goes, what would Navi do?
Ow! Anyway, hi, welcome to another episode of another Zelda podcast. My name's Kate, and I am here, as always, with my wonderful co-host, Dave Geisler.
Howdy, Kate. How are you?
Hiya, I'm good.
Doing well. I think maybe another version of Navi landing would just be like this.
Yeah, how could that be made more annoying?
But she wouldn't fall. She's a fairy. I just realized.
Yeah, I
guess she bumps into fences a lot, but she doesn't probably hit the ground.
I don't know.
I'm just thinking about that opening cinematic in Ocarina.
Oh, yeah.
She goes boom, and then flies in.
Maybe something like that.
I think that's the noise that fairies make when they fly.
That sounds right.
Yep, perfect.
All right, moving on.
That sounds more like a sped up Deku tree, but I digress.
So, on today's episode that has nothing at all to do with what we were just talking about.
I like not hosting. I'm a little less nervous and I'm interrupting. I apologize.
Well, thank you for putting the onus on me. I appreciate that. We will be discussing today so we each have our top 5 boss battles. So it's going to end up being 10 maybe-ish.
We'll
or
probably build a
many
list of top 10 favorite boss battles. Favorite. So it's totally just our opinion.
Yes. These do not include any kind of Ganon battles of any kind. So those are off the table. We will probably do another episode about those.
Yeah, I think we'll do a full Ganon battles episode because there were a few that I would have wanted to pick.
Yeah, I agree.
But I'm kind of glad we made that rule because I found others that I was very excited about.
Yeah, I kind of went back and I tried to pick ones from different games. I didn't want to pick them all from 1 or 2 games. I tried to go all over the place because I think a lot of them would be kind of on the same level.
Yeah.
So I was trying to think of ones that really stood out, which sometimes can be hard because, to be honest, there's a lot of repetition in terms of how one would defeat them. But trying to think of ones that stood out for any kind of reason, unique. The cool way that
we
you
just
have
said
to
last week
them.
or last episode that we were comparing and contrasting how there's a lot, like oftentimes there's like a plant based battle where there's a thing with a stem in the middle.
Yep.
And it attacks you and you have to attack it from above or below or whatever, and you kind of get it off of its main base. There are bosses that fly around you. There's bosses that ram towards you
or roll.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to talk about all of that. And actually we did not, when we did our 8 favorite items episode. I think we did 8 back then just because we thought, how could we possibly talk about more than 4? But from here on out, why don't we do top 10? Favorite 10. Like I think each can pick 5 items.
I guess top 10 is a thing that I have maybe seen before.
So we did not make the rule specifically that we could only choose 1 per game.
Nope, no rule for that, but I just kind of tried to.
I think I have a couple game repeats, but I also tried to keep it out there wide. And I think, Kate, what if we go just like in our 8 favorite items episode, what if we go least favorite to most? So
cool.
if the list were to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we'll actually go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yep. Before we get started with that, did we have some feedback to go over?
We had a comment pop up about our 8 favorite items episode, actually, which was episode 105. So season 1, episode 5, it was probably a couple months ago. But Rebel Audie on YouTube, it looks like this is a she, pardon me. She said, so since your sister's favorite item is Epona, you could technically say she chose the horse call from Twilight Princess. Smiley face. I'm so glad I found you guys. This is a great podcast. Well, Rebel Audie, yes, you're absolutely right. I thought that was really kind of funny.
You're right. This is a great podcast. That's what you meant, right?
Yeah, that's what I was implying to. No. Because we had said something like, I made a joke in that episode about my sister. I asked my sister casually, my younger sister, hey, what's your favorite item in Zelda? And she was like, Epona. So I think Rebel Audie caught the technicality here, and maybe we could count it.
Sure. It's a way to access Epona. Sure.
Way to access. So who knows? Oh, and I think I have actually an iTunes review I want to read as well. Is that all right?
Yes.
Cool,
Please
cool,
do.
cool. We love getting iTunes reviews because it certainly helps. This show's like super brand new and it really helps iTunes prioritize us. But if you don't want to leave us a review, don't do it. If you do,
5 stars only.
So we've got one here from Yankee 378, and Yankee 378 said, "This show scratches that Zelda itch that I've been having for ages. Very enjoyable for its casual format and passionate discussions. You can tell that you are listening to 2 legitimate fans. Doing High Rule proud." Well, thank you very much, Yankee 378.
That was awesome to see.
Super cool, right?
2 fans, not experts. Again,
It makes me feel warm
There's a
inside,
caveat,
though.
not experts.
I said this last episode. I didn't realize that we were just doing this show to be selfish. I didn't realize so many other people were going to enjoy it as well, and it's wonderful. And now it's opening up to having conversations with them as well.
And I like doing this because it will allow me to play games that I mean, it's already allowed me to play a game that I have not played before and that I probably wouldn't have. Mm-hmm. And I look forward to more of that. So who knows? Maybe I would revise my boss list in the future. But
yeah, maybe in season 2, season 3, we'll kind of revisit some of these lists. So as we speak about these items today, feel free to tweet us at ZeldaPod. If you have thoughts, if you think we've picked awesome bosses, if you think we perhaps have missed a few, or you completely disagree with a boss we picked, we'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, for sure. Because obviously these are very subjective. So these are just the ones that we like. So tell us.
No, this is the list.
This is it.
Okay.
The be all end all. But yeah, tell us.
That's how video games work.
Tell us what you like too. Right, Dave? Okay, so I don't know. Do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
Sure, I'll go first.
Okay,
yeah. Since you're hosting, we'll let you go last,
I will
suppose.
graciously let you go first.
So I picked, I'm going to get right to it here. My number 5 pick.
Yes, number 5.
My least favorite of 5, but still one of my favorites, is a deep dive. And I can say this legitimately. I have played this boss a number of times. Mm-hmm. From the original The Legend of Zelda for the Nintendo Entertainment System, I chose Gleeok, which is the 2-headed dragon. He becomes a 3-headed dragon a little bit later in another dungeon, but he's basically, I think he's like the 4th dungeon in The Legend of Zelda.
Okay.
And every time I play The Legend of Zelda, I've played through it a couple times now in my adult life. When I was a kid, I'd get about a dungeon or 2 in. But, before Gleeok, there's a Dodongo. What's up? What are you
Can I borrow your pencil?
Oh.
Thanks.
I was getting signals. I was getting hand signals.
I'm going to write something else down.
Oh, that's fine. That's
Carry
fine.
on.
Please. I'm trying to build the list here. That's why I have my pencil out. We'll write this down. So Gleeok, before that we have a Dodongo and there's like a plant, and it's all basically like single item bosses. You know, It's like we're in a room. Oh, there's a dragon in the very first dungeon in The Legend of Zelda. But Gleeok has 2 heads. They're moving around. You have to kind of navigate a little bit more. If you are really clever, sometimes you can pseudo glitch and get up behind the heads and just wail on Gleeok's body. but it's an intimidating. It's the first visually intimidating boss in The Legend of Zelda, and it's always an exciting moment because you're kind of halfway through the game. Out of 8 dungeons, it is 4. And it's a fun thing.
Seems to maybe break the mold a little bit.
Can I show you what Gleeok looks like? See,
before?
Look at that. Cool, right?
Interesting.
Weird face. She just gave me a weird face.
It looks like a cactus.
No, he's pointing down. His head.
Sorry.
That's not his feet. That's his face.
I don't know.
Gleeok, he is protecting a door which is on the top part of the screen. So you battle this monster facing up.
Oh.
So anyway, yeah,
cool.
Gleeok's my 5.
And one that I have not come across. So that would be why it is not on my list.
I didn't specifically try to get one from The Legend of Zelda, but when I was perusing, I was like, oh yeah, Gleeok's an easy pick.
Is it kind of like the one that you first remember?
The one that everybody first remembers is the dragon, the pseudo-unicorn dragon. It's just a dragon, but it looks like a unicorn in the first dungeon. That's the one that I think everybody kind of gets to. And it's the first time people really die for real if they go in there not quite prepared. Because that first dragon shoots fireballs at you. And if you don't go in with your full heart sword, that first dragon's pretty difficult. Gleeok is a little bit more glitchy. You can glitch it out a little bit and get through pretty quickly.
Is that why you picked it?
But if you don't, it's a real battle.
Boss hack.
A little bit. But if you don't get it just right, it's a real battle. And so
gotcha.
I think that's the first That's the first boss that's big in The Legend of Zelda. Physically, the sprites, it's made out of many, many sprites, whereas like the Dodongo is just a sprite or two, which is the second dungeon, which kind of lines up with a lot of the other Zelda games.
Gotcha.
It's the first really big one.
Cool. Okay, so
What's your
my
5?
number 5. So I had picked my 1 through 4 before this one. I was kind of trying to find my last one that I was kind of like, I like it more than others, or it was kind of interesting to me. And I was like, I should pick something from Link's Awakening because I have not given that game a lot of love, I don't think.
Fair enough. Wow. I was hard pressed to find a boss that I liked in Link's Awakening. I want to hear what your pick is.
Not all of it, because a lot of them are kind of similar, I think.
Are.
So I picked this one kind of more based on the way it looked, which was Facade. Facade is my choice for number 5. It was the face that's floating in the middle of nowhere. And I just thought it's creepy. It's weird. That's why I like this boss.
Did it have hands as well? Or maybe those hands are in like Oracle of Ages or something.
I don't know.
Did it have hands that moved around on the sides?
I don't think so. No. So this one makes holes in the ground that you have to avoid. And it also throws projectiles at you. So it's a couple different.
Yeah, you kind of have to go back and forth on the bottom to dodge the fireballs or whatever they are.
So that's what why I picked it as well. It was a little different from the other ones. They're kind of different mechanics. It also progresses the story because it hints that the island is part of the dream. So it's important in that kind of aspect because it says something like, oh, if it wakes up, that'll be the end. And you're like, wait, huh? Who?
It's
what?
the first boss. Yeah, it's like pleading with you even.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and so
that's cool.
It's interesting for that reason. And I don't know. It's just
that's a great pick.
Kind of a weird nightmare face.
Not the first, not the first or last, maybe the first, but definitely not the last face-based boss.
Yeah, I think, and I was looking up details for Facade to see if there are any fun facts or anything like that. And I guess that's not the only iteration of that.
So I think in Oracle
boss.
of Ages, there is a face mask that has some hands that floats around that you battle. I'm forgetting now.
That's kind of a boss design that comes up
a lot. The face with the big hands.
Fairly often, yeah. And
you see that in Skyward. You definitely get it in Ocarina.
Yeah, I like those for some reason because they're just bizarro to me. I don't know, because there's something different. Like we talked about, there's often a dragon, there's often a plant, but I guess there's technically often a disembodied head with hands, but I like that one more for some reason. I don't know.
That's cool. We're flying along here, but I'm fine with it. So my number 4, and I have some honorable mentions here, but I think we save those to the end if we have to fill in, if we have any doubles. So I'm pretty sure you don't have this one because I know you've never played it. So I'm very excited to tell you about the boss that I chose for number 4. And it is, believe it or not, from Phantom Hourglass.
Okay.
And I just got done last episode telling you that sometimes Phantom Hourglass left
knocking on it.
Something to be desired when it came to immersive, frankly, graphics or the experience. I even said in our last episode that sometimes it feels like you're looking down into like a real life mouse maze or something.
Yeah.
However, one of the things that Phantom Hourglass did very, very well is it got very creative with its dual screen aspect during boss battles. So, in like the second dungeon, there's an octopus boss that's up on the top screen and you're on the bottom and you're throwing stuff up with your pen and all that kind of stuff. That's fine. But I thought that there is a boss, and I think it's in the third or fourth dungeon, I can't actually remember, that did something that I had never seen before in a Zelda game. And I thought it was an excellent use of the dual screen mechanic. And I'm going to call him Crake.
Okay.
Crayk.
That looks right. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, are you up on the Google Drive? Oh, I see. Oh, no, you just literally Googled it.
Yes.
So Crake is, how did you know that that's what I was going to say? Did you see my screen?
Oh, no, I had them all. It was listed. It listed all the bosses. So
Fair
it's
enough.
just
super cool.
Just waiting in anticipation of which one you were going to pick.
I love it. That's great. Crake is a big old lobster turtle boss. And the thing that's very interesting about Crake, I just got done saying that sometimes the dual screen would be that you're looking up on the top. Normally in that game, you play on the bottom screen and the map is up on the top. Normally you literally touch, so often with DS games, you play on the top screen and the bottom screen is like a map and you're touching things to grab things. Well, in Phantom Hourglass and Spirit Tracks, you actually play on the bottom field because you're touching the actual ground where you want Link to walk when you play those games.
Gotcha.
So when a boss battle comes along and the top screen becomes part of the viewing area, things get exciting. So what happens with Crake is as soon as you start the battle, he goes, I guess, invisible, you could say. And actually, that reminds me of another face-based boss, the Phantom Hands boss in Ocarina, that goes invisible, that you can only see when you look through the spirit glass or whatever that thing's called.
The Lens of Truth.
The Lens of Truth, thank you. So, that's kind of a repeating thing in bosses, to have, the boss disappears, and you can only see it a certain way, you can only reveal it a certain way. And there's kind of like, there's a boss in Wind Waker that you kind of disappears, and you can only get it when you hit it with your mirror shield and stuff like that.
Yep.
And you freeze it. But the way they interpreted a boss becoming see-through in this game is that Crake does just become see-through. There's no trick. There's no Lens of Truth. There is not anything. That boss just disappears.
Oh, great.
However, the top screen becomes, so you're running around on the bottom screen, the top screen becomes a point of view, first person, from Crake's point of view.
Ooh.
So you see his little claws on the side, and you only see the top screen now is just looking back and forth, finding Link, rushing towards Link. So on the bottom screen, you're just running away from nothing, but you're kind of also looking at the top screen to try to get out of the line of sight of this boss that's coming after you.
Weird.
It's really cool.
Cool.
It was a very clever way to use the two screens. And so I remember being pretty impressed with that boss battle when I got to it, when I played Phantom Hourglass for the first time.
Yeah, that's cool.
It's
and
neat.
not something you could really do with the consoles unless you literally split the screen.
Exactly. Like, they really used some of the other stuff that they did with the DS, like blowing out stupid candles and stuff, was a little meta and a little dumb. This one was technically meta because there wasn't a in-game reason to see his perspective. Like, maybe they could have built a narrative where you did get a lens of whatever or a box of Picto or whatever, and then that was represented on the top screen. They really didn't go there. They just switched to that perspective.
Cool.
But nevertheless, it was neat. So you're kind of playing this boss through its eyes, also at the same time controlling down the bottom. So Crake.
Nice. Cool. So I'm looking at it on my computer right now. And so I always am tickled by the like subtitles of the bosses that they put in every game.
Yeah.
Like where they describe them in like, it has to be purposely
The
funny.
Twillet fossil.
Right. And so this one is the Bane of Courage. Like, how dramatic.
So, in
goodness.
I think you get different courage gems or something in Phantom, if I remember correctly. So maybe that was
And
part
this
of that.
one is located in the Temple of Courage.
There it is.
Seeing. So it
Bane
is
of
the
Courage.
Bane of Courage.
Crake. It was a cool battle.
That's
It's a little
how I
alarming.
would describe my cat sometimes. He's the Bane of Courage. He's just so very scary.
Sounds like he's just the bane of whininess, usually.
That too.
I'm just joking.
Also, looking at what this boss looks like, it reminds me of the villain in Moana.
Oh, I know. He's shiny.
Yeah, shiny.
I think, actually, you didn't know this, but in the Japanese translation, Jermaine actually does do the voice. No, it's not true.
That would be amazing. Okay, so I guess we'll move on to my number 4.
What's your 4?
My number 4.
I miss this. This is exciting. We haven't done one of these in a while.
I know.
I kind of like these top lists.
I like listening to top 10 episodes on other podcasts.
Fair enough.
There's something, and it's probably the way that I am being like structured and I like lists and stuff like that. So I always like top 10 lists because it's like bullet point this, bullet point that, and it usually doesn't like stray too far.
Well, it's a construct. It's a format that is structured, but it allows you to get some really oddball conversations. Like, would we have ever talked about Crake until we do our Phantom Hourglass episode? But
Probably not.
it's cool. These top 10 type of ideas.
So my number 4 is another one that's just bizarro looking, and that's mostly why I like it. It's a little different, and it is from Skyward Sword.
Oh, I'm listening.
So I picked Koloktos.
The automaton.
Yes.
Yeah.
Because so when you are fighting this battle, first it has this like serene expression on its face, which makes it weirder. So it's not like this thing that comes out and more often than not, they roar at you and the screen kind of vibrates or shakes and you're like, oh no, something's roaring at me. This is like a creepy robot.
Yeah,
that
totally.
just is smiling serenely at you because there's this kind of like Buddhist look to it.
It feels inspired by that aesthetic.
Mm-hmm. And then as it goes on, the expression changes and it even like laughs before you kill it. Like it just gets creepier and creepier. And I guess that's my aesthetic. So with this one, you're using the whip to grab its arms and kind of pull them off.
Yes.
It has, I don't
It
even.
has stages to it, I remember.
Yep. And it has many different limbs. It has arms and legs and swords and all sorts of.
And at one point, it has like
crazy
6
stuff.
swords.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So that's also very like, you know, what you were talking about with yours before, how you see it and you're like, oh no. Or I think you were talking about that with the dragon in the fire temple that we were talking about on our other episode. Yeah, where you see it and you're just like intimidated by it and you're like, yeah, and you're like, oh my, what do I do with this? That's kind of with Galactos. You're
Definitely.
like, oh God, how am I supposed to be attacking all 6 of its arms with 6 different swords on it? Like,
you're right. There's that 10 seconds of panic.
Yeah.
And also, Female Yeti gave that to us in our Twilight Princess episode a little bit.
Yep.
Like in the beginning, it's like, what?
Anything that kind of shoots up into the air, you're immediately like, oh no. But yeah, this one is just so cool. Again, yeah, probably based on a Buddhist deity. So there's that kind of unique look to it. Although, well, the Buddhist theme comes up a lot in Skyward Sword in particular.
Really?
I have found like in the fire temple, there's a lot of like statues and that kind of Buddhist Hindu look to them. Fun fact about Galactos is that you have to strike it at least once with its own cutlass.
Mm-hmm.
Otherwise it will not die.
Yep.
So that's unique and interesting because I don't know. I mean, I'm sure I'm wrong that it doesn't come up another time, but it's unique in that I don't remember that happening a lot, to be sure. I mean, obviously you're most often using your own sword,
right?
But this one you have to use its own weapon against it, which I think is cool.
And when you do, it really takes it out. It takes out both of the legs, everything.
Yep. And I think I recall because the cutlass is so huge and so heavy, you move slower with it too. So that provides an added challenge. Am I remembering that right? I think so. Usually with those bigger swords, you kind of have to move a little slower because it's just so heavy. So it kind of adds another challenge to it. And then your reward for beating it is the flame, and your sword gets kind of upgraded into the goddess longsword.
Yeah, there's a lot of sword upgrading in Skyward Sword, if I remember correctly.
Yes, how appropriate for the name of the game. So yeah, that's why I picked that one. Just it's not really fitting the mold of the other repetitive bosses. Is there another one that looks?
No, not with
like
all
that?
the stuff coming out. I mean, off the cuff here, the closest I can think of is like Calamity Ganon. Has a bunch of junk hanging off of him, arms and things, but it's a different kind of scenario.
Yeah. So that's why I like this one. Just weird and interesting.
Yeah.
And I remember that one not being, there are a lot of bosses in Skyward Sword where you get to the boss battle and you're like, like not this one. But this one is fun for me. I like fighting this one. I don't know.
Yeah. Using the whip to pull the stuff off. So I don't want to have an upset here, but I did not pick Galactos, and I think everything you said is totally valid. I kind of remember the first time I got to Galactos, I was like, really? This is the one? I got to be honest.
Fine.
It was one of my lesser favorite, but I do think there's a lot of cool things that happen there. So I'm so happy you put it in the list here.
I'm just looking at pictures of all the bosses in Skyward Sword, and a lot of them are kind of like
you mean you don't love the Monsters Incorporated
scary looking? No, I was like, yeah, that one looks cuddly. Or the Imprisoned is kind of like weirdly cuddly looking. Like you could get a stuffed animal that looks like the Imprisoned, but Galactos is like actually creepy and like I think a legitimate villain. Just looking at a picture of it right now, like that looks scary. Yeah. I would not want to mess with that.
I'll 100% give you that. That's true.
And it's in the Ancient Cistern for.
Oh, I don't have research on my
related
bosses, what they give you or anything. I'm going to do that for our next episode, I guess. Next time we do a top 10, get some things to follow up on it.
Okay.
So may I do my 3?
No.
Excellent.
Okay, fine.
Oh, now I have permission. Okay, so my third boss comes from the Minish Cap, and it is a boss towards the end of the game. And again, this is a boss that, in my opinion, was incredibly unique, did something very, very different that I had never seen before. Actually, many of the bosses in Minish Cap are fairly inventive.
I really want to play this game. We've talked about it in a lot of episodes, and every time, and I think I just said this before, like, I really want to play this one.
So
it sounds really cool.
I was going to request that we play the Oracle series first, but maybe we do jump over to Minish and then come back. I just finished Minish, and it could be fun that maybe that's our next review one, 3, 4, 5 episodes from now or something. We'll see. Because I'd be happy to lend the cartridge to you. Anyway, so in the Minish Cap, towards the end, it's the boss of I think it's called the Sky Temple or something like that. But it's kind of the almost final temple of the whole thing. You're up in the sky. You've met the sky people. There's some inferences to like Skyward Sword connections, even though Skyward Sword came out after this game. There's a little bit of retconning happening. Anyway, this boss, by the end, it's kind of a double boss. And it is a huge manta ray, a big, huge manta ray, and it's called Gyropair or Gyropair, whatever you want to call it. I would say Gyropair.
They just like to make it as unpronounceable as possible.
Gyrogpair. So the reason it says pair is because it's actually two mantises. There's this smaller blue one and a big, huge red one.
Yeah.
Now, this is a very action-packed sequence, and for a 2D game, that's saying something.
Yeah.
This blue mantis comes by, swoops Link up. Well, actually, I think Link jumps into a tornado, and it throws him on the back of the blue mantis. The mantis, you notice there's like a bunch of eyes. There's 4 eyes on the blue little baby mantis, and then the big mantis has 8 eyes. Now, there's also a mechanic in the Minish Cap where you can duplicate yourself 2, 3, 4 times based on your upgrades, and you do that by green little tiles that are on the ground. And now I can see that you're looking at a graphic of this boss right now, and you'll notice there are 4 green tiles on the back of this big red mantis.
Yep.
So what happens is immediately you jump. It's all like mode 7 graphics. So the blue mantis that you're on, these things are turning and spinning and the background is flying. You're up in the air, thousands of miles in the air, maybe not thousands of miles, but certainly hundreds of miles in the air. Yeah, right. You're in outer space. And the ground is whizzing by, and the clouds are swifting, just moving by, and you're just kind of hanging on. You're standing on this mantis, and you're like, "What's going on?" Because in a 3D game, maybe you'd be Z-locked in, or you'd be grabbing something, or even I can't help but think about the fish level in Twilight Princess.
Okay, yeah.
Even though that's underwater, it's a similar kind of like, "Oh, I'm on a thing."
Or the one in Skyward Sword in the thunder cloud.
Ooh, the one that gets infested, right? The big whale that gets infested.
Yeah, that kind of thing where you're hanging on him too.
Yeah, that's cool. So in this one, the blue mantis flies over the red one. You use the Rock's cape you get in that game, which allows you to jump really, really high. Okay. Just similar to Rock's feather, which is, of course, something that you experienced. You jump over to the big red mantis. The big red mantis is going. Things are flying at you. All the eyes are closed on the big red mantis. They open up in certain patterns. And the trick is you need to hit all the eyes at the same time. So, of course, you have to go down to the tiles, duplicate yourself a few times, dodge all the things, get up there, hit all the eyes at the exact same time. And you do this 3-4 time kind of phases. Each time the blue mantis comes back in, you have to jump up, jump on its back. It flies away, flies back around. There's a little mini section where that blue guy is opening up different eyes and you're trying to hit its eyes just to go into the 3rd phase. And I got to say, this was like an action-packed boss.
It sounds like it.
On a Game Boy Advance.
That's cool.
It was cool.
Why is it always eyes? Why is it always their eyes?
It's always eyes.
You'd think they learned by now.
I think kind of people are trained to go for the eyes at this point.
Sure.
In Zelda games.
It's always the eyes.
If they make it an eye, then it's obvious. It's like how in other games, it's like always the red glowing thing. In Zelda, it's always eyes. So much so that one of my honorable mentions actually has an eye that in the original version didn't have it. And when it was re-released on 3DS, an eye got added on.
Of course.
To make it a little easier to see where to hit it.
They won't understand what it is if we don't put an eye on it.
These kids won't know what to do. And I'll save that. Some people might be able to guess what I'm talking about right now. I'll save it for our honorable mentions. We may not have duplicates. This is very, very interesting so far.
I know.
This is cool. So Gyropair. That's what I'm saying.
Let's put a poll up in terms of how you would pronounce it and just spell everyone the same.
People just click.
And
they're like, yeah, it's that one, obviously.
One.
Not even phonetic spelling.
Nope.
I love it.
Nope, exactly the same.
That's funny.
So I guess moving on. Let's see, my number 3.
Yeah, we're at 3 right now.
So my number 3 is one from Twilight Princess that we have talked about before because it involves your favorite item, which is the spinner.
Yes.
And this boss is another one. I guess I like the ones.
You must be talking about Star-Lord.
I like ones that float in the air. Yeah, I am talking about Star-Lord, which is also a cool name and pronounceable. Because it's like letters that make sense when they are put together. So that's nice. It's like one that I can say and I understand. So Yeah, this one is in the Arbiter's Grounds, which is a cool level in and of itself. It uses your favorite item, which is the spinner, and a cool mechanic. There are 2 different phases to it. So it's this floating skull. First, you are using the spinner to ride up the side of like the center column. You can also jump over to the other side where you're riding along the wall, and you have to you fly into it, right? That's how.
Well, I remember the first part being the kind of sand pit where this whole skeleton comes out.
Is that the first part or the second part?
I remember that to be the first
That
part.
might be the first part.
And you break his backbones. You have to go into the spinner and get down there and break the backbones. And after 3 or 4 times of that, you think you've beat him.
Right.
Then he dissolves halfway, and then the head comes back up, and then the walls drop out, and then you go into the crazy action zone.
I just knew there were 2 phases. I didn't remember what order. But yeah, so that's another part of it is the trying to fly into its spine. Sorry, buddy. But
maybe that's where that teen rating comes in.
I was just breaking someone's spine. It's fine.
Because it cracks and crumbles and stuff. It's a little...
And that part's difficult. Like I remember taking quite a few times to get past the little skeletons that are popping
little
up.
zombie thingies, yeah.
Yeah, and getting to it. So it's a cool perspective that, again, it's like action packed, like the one that you were just talking about, where you're actively moving the whole time. If you're not, you're not doing your job. So you have to be shooting around this room at all times to be able to beat it.
I do think that makes a really good Zelda boss when there's an equal balance between skill that's required, actually executing something, not just pushing a button like the fish in Twilight Princess,
right?
But also something that's action packed and kind of epic is always really nice.
Yeah.
Just to be a hypocrite, sometimes like when you get into these boss battles where it's just a solid thing and it's like, okay, I need to, I know Wind Waker has the plant in the Earth Temple where it's like, all right, cool, things are hanging, I chop the things, I run up to the eye, hit the eye, done.
Yep.
It's not necessarily epic in that way. And so whenever you can get one of these boss battles that really surprise you and do something different and make you feel like you're in a situation that you are just on the brink of being in control of, I think that adds to a really good boss battle.
Absolutely. And it's a way of using the item that you have won or you got in that temple in a different way because you're using it the whole time. You're not just like every once in a while like shooting your bow or every once in a while like shooting your hook shot or claw shot. It's like you're using it the whole entire time. It is essential to this boss. You definitely need it to beat it.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's true because once in a while, when Zelda is at its worst, you'll get some mid item. You use it 1 or 2 times. And then when you go into the boss, you're like, all right, I already know I'm using the mid item, the one I got. And so often that's always true. But when you do something like what Twilight Princess does with the spinner, you use it so much that it just becomes part of your vocabulary. It's not the magic item for the button for the thing.
Right.
You get so used to using it in that context that you're kind of like, you want to use it in the Stallard battle.
I like that one. That was just a cool one. It was another one I came across when I was replaying the game that I was like, oh, cool. I remember this one. This one's fun.
I agree.
Because a lot of the bosses are just they're either tedious or easy or a combination of the two or, just sometimes not that interesting. And the ones that we have been talking about so far are just like the ones that make you go, oh, this is neat. They really did something differently this time around.
I agree. I love it. And I have one more thing to say about Stallard because Stallard is my number 2.
Ah.
And so I'm going to just write it in here on the list. So we'll speak about it just a bit more. I also thought, as you were speaking, I thought about how the spinner is strong in this case because it's immediately clear that you'll probably use the spinner because you can see the grits and the grates are on the edge of the sand.
Right.
But it's not immediately obvious that you should use it, for example, on his backbone. Like you could kind of guess it's the thing in the center. Yeah. But it's not like glowing red. It doesn't have a big eyeball on it. Mm-hmm. There is a moment where you're like, okay, am I supposed to take out these mummy skeletons? Am I supposed to be doing something else?
Right.
Am I supposed to be on the spinner and then using the arrows or what is it? And then that first time where you hit the spine, you're like, that's what we're doing.
And it's challenging. I like that boss for that reason as well. It's not just super easy 1, 2, 3 dead. It's like there is some challenge to it. It does take a bit of time.
Yes.
If you are bad at steering your spinner like me.
When you are at a weaker boss, creatively a weaker boss, that's the worst is when you do the first cycle and you're like, all right, I just know I'm doing this 2 more times.
Right.
it's like you already know the end of that battle. Oh, they're going to throw twice as many things at me on the second round, and maybe there's going to be some extra bats on the third round. But that's when a boss battle is at its weakest in a Zelda game. And so when you're always on your toes like this, that is a lot of fun.
Yeah, I like the multi-phase ones the most, even though it can be tiring, not tiresome, but
You're like,
tiring.
I did it. Oh, no.
Yeah. But I like that. It's like, okay, something different now. It's a cool challenge. A lot of the Ganon battles are like that.
Certainly.
So I'm sure we'll talk about that.
That'll be a fun episode for sure.
Yeah.
So my 2 was Stall Lord. So we're definitely going to be using some of my honorable mentions, which we won't talk about until we get to the top of the list. It seems like you might have 1 or 2 as well.
Yep.
So if I may, I must ask you, what is your number 2?
I probably could have switched 2 and 3, or they're probably, right about the same for me. So I don't know that my 2 is like leaps and bounds above my 3 or whatever. But this one is one that basically when we were talking about making this podcast, I was already talking about, like, in terms of favorite characters too. And
I can't wait.
Part of the, it's not that exciting.
Is it Twin Rova?
It is Twin Rova.
Whoa!
Because I don't know. So this boss is funny. It's interesting. It's unique. It's different. It's 2 bosses in one. Which
Double phase.
Yep. Same kind of thing. So this one, you're using that combination of the fire and ice attacks. You are absorbing attacks into your shield that you then shoot back off.
Yeah, because you have the mirror shield.
Yep. So you have to shoot the opposite. You have to shoot the fire at the ice one and the ice at the fire one.
One which shoots fire at you, one which shoots ice at you. If you're quick enough, you realize, wait a second, I can reflect this stuff back. And since these are opposite elements, I should shoot them at each other.
And they don't always shoot the one that you need at you. So it's not just stupid easy that way by them just giving you exactly what you need to then defeat them. There's a little bit of, okay, I have to miss that one running around. I have to, okay, so do I have 1 or do I have 2? Like, do I have enough now? Because you have to build them up before you shoot them back off. I think you need 3.
Yeah, you know what? I think you're right.
So it's not just really simple. I like like I said, I like the humor of them yelling at each other. I like the look of Twin Rova when she's combined into that one woman. I don't know what you would.
Yeah, they form to be a singular.
Yeah, so I just like the
out.
look of the boss. It's a cool looking one.
And I guess we didn't really say yet. These are the 2 witches in is it the Shadow Temple or the Spirit Temple in Ocarina of Time?
Yes, sorry. I just assume everyone knows this.
I often confuse Shadow and Spirit. In any of the games.
So this is Spirit Temple. Sorceress Sisters. I'm looking at a picture right now. She's just so cool.
So we also spoke about Twin Rova in our favorite NPCs episode.
Yeah, for the same kind of reason that, I don't know, they're funny. They're arguing about who's the younger sister. They have the little...
I'm 380.
Yeah, they have little halos that pop up over their head and they go to heaven somehow after you defeat them. So not only is it just... Usually you beat the boss and there's like the music, da-da-da, and then that's it. You get the heart and... You're done. But this one, there's like a little funny banter back and forth. Yeah.
And they are alive and well in Termania in Majora's Mask.
Yeah, they come up more than once. Are they in another game as well?
Yeah, they're in one of the portables. I think Twin Rova, the boss, pops up in one of the Oracle games, if I may.
I think so. I think I was reading that, she/they kind of pop up more than once. But I picked Twin Rova for my number 2 just because it was kind of the first one that pops out in my mind from when I played my first game, which was Ocarina of Time, where I was like, this is a cool video game. It's not just like a scary boss that you have to murder. Like there's humor involved. It's interesting. It wasn't something like I
think that's great.
I like games in general that kind of mix humor in. Like Mario does a good job of that too. And so I like any kind of Legend of Zelda little half joke or something like that where they kind of try to get a giggle out of you.
Oh, I came across another one in Wind Waker, and the mother and child island. The fairy hits on Link.
Oh yeah.
I was like, geez Louise, can we get away from this? I couldn't help but think
you're just my type.
Yeah, and he's like looks at the lion like kind of awkward, and I was
love
like,
that part.
I was like, I'm glad you feel awkward about that, Link, because it's weird.
Because you should. That's bizarre.
There's less, well, maybe there isn't less of that with the fairies in Breath of the Wild, but we spoke all about that in our 3rd episode, Link's Loves. So, okay, may I tell you my first?
I guess.
Can I ask you if you can guess what my favorite boss battle is? Because you know that I love Stall Lord. You can't guess. That's all right.
I don't know.
It's
There's
probably
too
less
many.
epic, quote unquote, than you expect.
Okay.
But it's more of one that was another bit like Twin Rover for you. It was a moment in my Zelda playing experiences where I was like, cool. And I think it was cool for a lot of people. I've already spoken about this moment a few times, but it's Fyrus.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It's Fyrus the Belrog.
That's right. That's right.
So Fyrus, as how I choose to pronounce this, Fyrus. He's the enchanted Goron in the. Is it the Goron Mines? Isn't it? Yeah. In the Goron Mines. And I remember seeing Fyrus as a quick clip in the original Twilight Princess trailer.
That's right.
And I was like, just seeing those 2 seconds of that part of the game, I was like, I'm in. I'm all the way in. I'm ready to play this game because it looked wonderful.
Yeah, it
looked,
is a scary looking boss.
I usually don't trend towards more detailed graphics are better. I think there are times where that's really appropriate. I am happy to play Link's Awakening. I'm happy to play Twilight Princess. I'm happy to play games that look super real, like Stranded Deep, and I'm happy to play games that look super fake, or not fake, but just like really simple graphics as well. I don't usually worry about that too much. However, with Twilight Princess coming off of the Wind Waker hangover that I had, like I was so excited to see what almost felt like photorealistic Belrog creature.
Yeah. It is, I mean, it goes along with the theme of Twilight Princess being dark and spooky because this is a creepy looking
It's
boss.
classic. It's a fire beast. It's very classic. There's nothing particularly inventive. They just really pulled it off.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
And that's it. And this was also one of those bosses that when I got to it, because you have the plant boss first. And it's like, okay, cool. We're throwing things at the monkeys. The monkeys are helping. The big piranha plant it gets defeated.
Yep.
You have that in the dungeon just before this. But then this is that, as we kind of spoke about in our previous episode, in this is that first dungeon where you're really in it and you're kind of scared to get to the boss at the end. I remember being I could tell what was coming and he wakes up and that fire comes out and you have that moment of panic. Where you're like, oh my God, what am I going to do?
Yeah.
The same panic that I felt with which probably would have been on this list if we would have not had this rule, with the original Ganon battle in Ocarina. When final phase, when he comes up as the big pig, you have that panic of like, there's a solid 10 seconds where you have no idea what you're going to do. You just run around like a crazy person.
Yeah, because there are these chains on Fyrus. So you're like, do I even use these? Like, does this have something to do with the boss? What's his weak spot? What am I doing here?
Totally.
Because they're also huge chains, so obviously then you use those with your boots or whatever. But at first you're like, this guy looks kind of indestructible.
Yeah, right. He does. He looks like he's made out of fire. Super cool. So Fyrus is I think there are others on my list here that we could give, like Stalord has the multi-layer thing. I obviously was oddly excited about that Minish Cap boss. I think there's a few others that are also highlights, and I'd love to return to this sometime. But right now, Fyrus was like the definitive. All right, let me put it this way: before the Wind Waker came out, Nintendo released a demo of Link and Ganon, pseudo photorealistic. It was just a cinematic of them like sword fighting each other, and that was before Wind Waker came out. And I remember being very excited about that look and being like, I'm ready to go to Hyrule. I want to go live in Hyrule. And when the Wind Waker came out, which ultimately there were things that were really impressive about the graphics in Wind Waker as well, but seeing that moment in the trailer where we saw the fire beast, it was classic kind of like old Eastern aesthetic. It was just for a split second, even though we were talking about how Twilight Princess trends more Eastern and Western aesthetics combined, how the Zelda series in general is becoming more of its own cultural experience, whereas the Legend of Zelda clearly was pulling off of like Castle Times, you know what I mean? Eastern European kind of aesthetic. I don't know. This was in this moment for me, I was okay seeing that aesthetic completely realized, and it was really nice.
Cool. I like that one too. That whole level in general is awesome from start to finish. So.
In fact, Fyrus looks less cool as the Goron.
Yeah.
I mean, you're kind of done. You're like, I don't know. You want to go back to the fire thing? Because that was really neat.
There's something interesting about all the possessed things in Twilight Princess, which we've mentioned before is kind of the theme of the bosses, is that they're possessed in some way, shape, or form. And so, I think this is a perfect example of that, because you've kind of seen Pieces before, actually, I think in the other fire temple, so that's the dragon, and I'm thinking, I think I'm thinking of Dodongo's cavern, which is kind of isn't that a kind of possessed thing?
The
big
Dodongo?
boss in that one?
He's just kind of mad, I thought.
Oh.
He's just eating people.
Maybe I'm getting, oh, that's right. But even in the Twilight Princess possessed things, I think this is the coolest version of that.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, right, sure. I could probably keep talking about it, but I feel like we should move on. But I'll just finally say that it was such an arresting boss visually that I completely forgot that it was even a good Goron inside there. Anyway.
Right.
So it was, it was scary enough in a really fun, good, cool way.
Cool. So, all right, I guess we are at my number one, which is also from Ocarina.
Ocarina.
But it is one that you had kind of touched on before, which is Bongo Bongo.
Bongo Bongo is your favorite boss ever?
Yeah.
You got to tell me about this.
It's so cool. It's another one that's, disembodied head and floating hands.
Wow.
So I didn't also then want to, I like them all of the ones that are kind of like that. So I like the one in Twilight Princess that's kind of like that as well, but I like it less. I do like that one because it sneezes out arrows, and that's hilarious to me. But so Bongo Bongo is in the Shadow Temple. You need the lens of truth to be able to see it because it does go invisible. So that's an interesting element because, when you're playing that level, you're like, how on earth is this tool, this item, going to come into the final boss battle?
Right. And for that matter, the hover boots.
Right. So you don't have to use the hover boots. That's what's interesting. You do not have to use them.
I have always used them. How can you do it without? I'm so interested right now. You just deal with the bounces?
You don't. So it's the only boss to not require an item found in the dungeon to defeat it, which is, you don't need to use the hover boots. You're going to have less control that way for sure. You're going to bounce up higher when it's hitting the drum, but you don't need them.
Fascinating. I never even thought of that.
Yeah, so that's interesting to me. Obviously, it's a very bizarre looking boss. That whole temple is terrifying. And then you come to this boss and you're like, okay, this is appropriate. Like, I do not like this thing.
Yeah, it was spooky. Yeah, you're right.
I read it has the highest health out of any Ocarina boss.
Interesting.
I got that from the Zelda Gamepedia. That's what it said. So it requires the most amount of hits. Yeah. So it's more challenging in that way.
Does it have eyes in its hands? Is it that thing? Because so often with these hand face things, it's like, okay, the hands are going to attack the hands first, and then that's going to reveal something on the face.
I believe so. Let me remind myself by looking this
Twilight
up.
is definitely that.
I think so. They often do, yeah, because the hand has to have a weak spot.
Oracle of Ages had a hand one, a robot, or maybe it was Minish Cap. Minish Cap definitely had an ancient robot hand thing where you had to arrow into eyeballs on the palms.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So you hit the hands with arrows, the long shot or your sword. So you could do any of those, and then that stuns the hands, and then you have to shoot its eye, as of course you do.
Sure. I guess if it stuns the hands, it stops drumming too.
Yep. It was just such a weird thing. Like, I remember seeing it being like, how did they even come up with this? What is this based on? Like, it's not a dragon or plant or whatever, sea creature, because there's a lot of sea creatures in the games. Like, what even is it?
Guys, I got it. It's a thing that plays a drum.
It's a thing.
And we're going to put Link on the drum.
The thing that I'm looking at right now online is it's described as a gargantuan, invisible, and evil spirit appearing as a one-eyed monster. Mm-hmm. So it's a monster.
As.
Yeah, I don't know.
Means it's not necessarily its form all the time.
It's creepy looking in this picture that I'm looking at too. It's horrifying. So I don't know. It's just so interesting to me. I loved that one. Bongo. And then, like we said, it makes its iterations in other ones. I think this is the best version of it. Personally, the most interesting version because the floor is its own element to the boss, kind of.
The floor and the lens of truth. Like, you have a lot of layers happening.
Yeah, you're really using two items, although, like we said, you don't have to use the boots. You do have to use the lens of truth to be able to see it. So it's a combo element or item boss. And I like it for that reason.
That's neat. I love it.
Bongo Bongo, man. It is also so pronounceable.
Bongo Bongo, right.
So yeah, it says Total of
You're reading off like one of the wikis or something right now?
Yep, the Zelda wiki about how it has the most health. 26 sword hits.
Huh.
So that's a lot.
Crazy. That's cool.
Yeah.
So we have one double, Stall Lord. So I am going to opt in two. Well, how about this? I have two honorable mentions. Do you have one or two as well?
I have two.
Oh, let's quickly talk about our honorable mentions, and we'll see if we want to pull either of those in as if we were to say that it goes bongo bongo. Right now, let's just try this. I'm just making this up as I go. Our top pick is bongo bongo, then Fyrus, then Twin Rova, then probably Stall Lord, then Gyro Pair, then Cloctus, then Crack. I can barely read these names. Cracky, then Facade, and then Gliok. Okay, whatever. But basically, around 4 or 5, we need to pick something to go in around 4 or 5. So my two honorable mentions were Volvagia, which is the fire temple. I mean, he was actually in there for quite a while. He had another one of those. I know I keep picking like fire things that scare you.
Yeah.
But
I keep picking the Bizarro Nightmare ones.
Nightmare ones. You're right, you do.
Yeah.
So Volvagia, the first time he came up and did his entrance, we spoke about this in our Fire Dungeons episode just previous to this one, so I won't spend too much time. The actual boss battle, the reason I took him off the list is the actual boss battle isn't that involved.
Right.
As I said last week or whatever, is that it's just really just whack-a-mole.
You can kind of use your shield to just...
Yeah. But that entrance is pretty cool.
There.
That's one of the first really good entrances in a game.
Yeah.
And then this one, I would probably lobby hard for this one. I really had him on the list for the long time. Goat from Majora's Mask. G-O-H-T, Goat. He is the bull boss at the end of, I believe, the Goron Temple. And you have to use your Goron ability. Basically, he runs around in a circle, in a big, huge donut. And you get it a power. You get this Goron power roll in that game that lets you like race along really quickly. And they make it such that to defeat Goat, he just stampedes around and around and around on this humongous track. And you have to race along next to him, constantly going, keeping speed up with your Goron thing. So it's literally a high-speed chase.
Cool.
And you're jumping off jumps and trying to land on certain things. And then when Goat gets hit, he falls on his side. And then you can do the sword stuff and you track him again. And Goat is the character I was speaking about earlier, where in the original Majora's Mask, once you knocked him down or it down, it's technically like a mechanical thing. Then you'd have to strike it in a sweet spot. Well, in the Majora's Mask 3D remake for Nintendo 3DS, they added this humongous balloon eye that comes out of his back now, and you can even hit it with arrows just from the ground.
Yeah, why are their eyes half the time on their backs, too? We talked about, like, why do they always have eyes in this one? Like, why is your eye on your back?
I agree.
That's a weird spot for it.
So I thought the Goat battle was super cool. I played that when I was in college when it first came out. And I remember kind of going into that battle. That was another one where I was like, how do I even... He would just run past. You're like, what am I supposed to do here? A little bit. Like, okay. And you're kind of running around. You're kind of hitting some of the plants, trying to like get some arrows, getting the crap kicked out of you. And then all of a sudden you realize, oh, maybe I should use the Goron roll thing that I just learned in this thing. You start rolling along with them. And then it's like, oh, are we doing this? A bit like Stall Lord, where it's on a rotating track, but significantly larger. Whereas Stall Lord goes around a column. This is a donut. This is like the Large Hadron Collider. This is like you're going. It technically repeats, but it's big.
Gotcha. Cool.
Goat. So what are your two?
My two are maybe they're more boring than yours. My first one is the Diababa, the Twilight Forest Temple boss, because it kind of...
Oh, the piranha plant?
Yeah.
Yep, cool.
Just because it kind of had some interesting elements to it.
Sure.
After a fairly easy dungeon, this is an interesting boss that kind of makes you think. So you have to catch the bombs from the bomb plants, I think it is, from the monkeys. And then you have to get that into the plant. And there's also, that's another one actually where it dies and you think it's dead and it comes back. So,
and it's definitely a puzzle boss where you're it's more about learning the puzzle part, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Well, that's why I liked it. That's why I picked it as my honorable mention, because it's not just a slash and hack.
I often like the puzzle bosses more myself when it's just flat out combat. You know, there are times where that's fun in Zelda, but I don't think, for me, that's not where Zelda excels almost ever.
Right.
And so if it's just that's why some of these gauntlets that happen, like the one that happened at End of Wind Waker, which we're going to talk about next week, it leaves something to be desired for me. So these puzzle bosses are
Sure.
cool. And like, for example, Star-Lord.
Guardians of the Galaxy?
Yep.
What?
So when you're battling Star-Lord, no, like Goat and Star-Lord, they are kind of a nice balance one more time of this kind of, it's kind of a puzzle. You kind of have to figure out what you're doing, but it's very action-packed. But at the end of the day, you're not just whacking away with a sword. I mean, Goat does have that second phase where you whack away with a sword.
They all kind of do after a while.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I picked that one because it's kind of interesting, and especially because it's like the first big boss you're fighting. You're like, oh,
and it is
this
big.
is interesting.
And it does force you to think beyond the boss by you incorporating the monkeys and stuff. It does make you think about the room.
Yep.
That's cool.
And then I also picked Morpha from Ocarina of Time, the water temple boss, just because.
Oh, the crazy abyss monster.
Yes.
Yes, that one was pretty good.
That is its subtitle, isn't it? It's like something abyss monster.
Oh, really?
Isn't it?
I was referencing the James Cameron film, The Abyss.
The movie.
It's like the exact same look.
It had some kind of funny.
Yeah, it was a glob that would come
subtitle to
up. That was a cool one because you're kind of like, how do I attack this thing? It's just water. And how do you do it? Is it boomerang or?
So no, you're using your hook shot. So you grab onto it, pull it out, and then.
And it's got like one little membrane or brain or something that you pull out. Isn't that right?
Yeah. So it's kind of. I think I picked this one because it's a twist on the eye. It's not exactly an eye, and it also moves within it. So it's not just in one fixed location on the boss. It's not an eye that's always in the same spot. It moves back and forth or whatever in and out of the water. So
you're right.
It's a little more challenging that way. It can grab you and throw you around the room and kind of toss you into a corner or toss you into the water.
Into the water even, yeah.
So there's that. It's a little more
I remember being pretty
because of
freaked
that.
out when it would grab me.
Yup.
Because the camera stays in one spot and waves back and forth while he's
it does not look
whipping you
pleasant
about.
for Link. So yeah, I just picked that one
That's
because
a good one. I kind of forgot about that boss.
Yeah, I like that one. And I remember the sound effects being cool. That kind of like weird water squishy sound.
I'm also realizing they're rendering a 3D water beast before the abilities of the system could actually render like real reflections and stuff. And they did an okay job with it. It felt like water to the best of the ability in the Nintendo 64, if I recall.
Yeah. It's also, it wasn't normal water either.
Yeah.
I don't know. Oh, okay. Sorry. It's a giant aquatic amoeba.
Amoeba.
That's what I was thinking. Not abyss. Amoeba.
Sure.
Yeah. Those are my two.
Crazy.
My two.
I don't know. I don't want to
mentions.
replace any of these. I even like the honorable mentions.
I think we picked the main, like, interesting, different ones.
I'm fine with this.
But I am happy to know what other folks enjoy, what their favorite bosses are, whether it's because they're challenging or because they're simple or because
I'm looking at the list
reasons.
right now. I'm going to build a four thing, Fyrus, Bongo Bongo, Twin Rova, and Star-Lord quiz right now on Twitter. We'll see. People can go to it. Well, I won't post it till after this episode comes up. And then we'll see. And then maybe we can grab our 4 honorable mentions and see which one maybe would be the one to slot in that extra Star-Lord spot.
Yeah, I feel kind of bad that like Twin Rova was my number 2 because I don't know that it's that like crazy, but that one's more like nostalgic and sentimental.
Well, to be honest, Fyrus is kind of that for me.
Sure.
It's almost more nostalgic. I think there are more epic battles. That one's visually epic, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, like we said, these are subjective. So
yeah,
just because we're
an
crazy
excuse
about
to talk
them.
about some boss battles.
Yeah.
Super cool. Well, Kate, if people want to talk to me, they can continue this conversation with me. They can find me on Twitter and Instagram. I'm at Raptor Paint on both.
I am at Instagram. I'm trying to remember where I am. I only take cat pics on Instagram. I'm not on Twitter. You can try to find me on Twitter. I'm not there. Actually, I probably
have like an old
one
account
post from 2012 or something.
Perfect.
But I am not technically there anymore.
good.
So Instagram, I only take cat pics, but I also take non-cat pics.
Amazing.
It's
Kate,
a lie.
if people want to tweet the show, they can do that. They can find us at Another Zelda Pod on Twitter and Instagram. And they can go to our actual website, anotherzeldapodcast.com, where they can find links to our iTunes page, our Google Play page, our YouTube page, where people can leave comments. We love it if people leave us messages directly on Facebook or in the comments if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're just listening to us, please tweet to us. Or leave an iTunes review now I think about it.
Just Google Another Zelda Podcast and go to all the social medias.
Stuff will pop up for sure. Another Zelda Podcast.
We'll be there.
Great.
So I guess that's it for now. And
Next week, what are we talking about?
we are going to review the Wind Waker.
Indeed. I'm ready.
Yes.
I'm ready.
That
I
will
had
be a good one.
an emotional experience playing Wind Waker. Goods and bads. But definitely some goods, too.
Highs and lows,
Yeah.
just all over the place.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Do you feel okay? Are you all
I
right?
think I'll get by.
Okay, good. All right, well, we will I'll see you next time.
Cool.
Okay, bye. Oh, wait.
I don't know.
sorry.
How do we do it when you do it? Kate, I'll see you later.
Okay, sounds good. Okay, bye.